This little saga won't end, will it? It seems that every time you open up an internet, something new pops up. It's like a war. A legal war. It seems that no matter what, Alpine is determined to keep Oscar Piastri. And if you can hear noise going on outside, there is a man with a leaf blower. Inconsiderate. So to recap then, we had the start of this back just before the Hungarian Grand Prix when Vettel announced his retirement. On the 1st of August, Alonso shocked the F1 world by announcing his move to Aston Martin that caught everybody off guard. Alpine responded by announcing Oscar Piastri, which is what everybody wanted, but Piastri countered it by saying, well, actually, no, I was never told about this. And now it looks like he's actually going to McLaren to replace Ricciardo, who seems to be on his last legs at Woking. And as each bit has dropped in the news, I've done an episode. But now it looks like that Alpine is getting desperate. They are going to do whatever they can to keep this young Australian. Omar Safnauer told Reuters on Monday that going through the courts is 90% certain, which is a very specific number. It also allows for 10% wiggle room, I guess, so there's a chance it couldn't go through the courts. But what Alpine believes is that at some level Piastri is still owned by the team, and that they can have Piastri race for the team even if he has already publicly snubbed them. This is despite the general consensus being that Piastri's contract expired on the 31st of July and that he is, effectively, a free agent and can now go wherever he wants. Meanwhile, Alpine is going to be dragging this through the FIA's Contract Recognition Board. Going the whole hog to the UK High Court is the next option if the CRB finds in favour of Piastri in this case, because Alpine is ready to sue Piastri for compensation due to the insane amount of money they've sunk into his career. Safnauer has also hinted that a trip to the High Court might be something if the court finds in favour of Alpine, but Piastri refuses to drive for them. And while that might sound like a silly thing, there is precedent for this in football, as the race pointed out. In football, if a player under the age of 24 is signed on the Bosman rule, a free transfer, they have to pay some sort of compensation to the player's former club to cover training and development so far. Now, how much that is all down to negotiation. That might be affected by how good the player is, which club is signing him, which club he's come from, potential ability, and so on. So, the next Messi might have more of a compensation fee attached compared to the next, I don't know, Harry Maguire. It's funny because he's shit. And this isn't the first time the CRB has been used in Formula 1. Back in 2004, Williams tried to re-sign Jenson Button back to the team from BAR for the 2005 season. And Williams claimed that the 2009 champion had signed a deal that meant him going back to Oxfordshire. But BAR had an option on him for 2005 that needed to be activated by the 31st of July 2004 that would have meant JB staying at BAR and therefore not being able to go to Williams. The option was approved by the BAR board, which contained Safnauer, ironically, and the whole thing was settled before that deadline on the 31st of July. Even though everything was signed and sealed with Button's management, they still went to Williams and said, "So, JB has no contract for next season. You still want him?" And since BAR had activated everything within the right amount of time, Jenson had to stay at BAR. However, the following year, it happened again. Button had signed a pre-contract with Williams for the 2006 season, but then he learned that BMW was withdrawing support from Williams and going to Sauber instead. So he decided, actually, I'm better off staying at BAR and keeping those factory Honda engines. But because he'd already signed the contract with Williams, he and his management had to buy themselves out of the Williams contract, which resulted in them sending a huge amount of compensation to Williams. Yeah, it's no surprise that Jenson didn't talk about that a lot in his book. So it's happened before, and it can happen again, by the looks of things. But if indeed Piastri is no longer under contract with Alpine, then I'm not sure how this can possibly be settled in Alpine's favour. But two things need factoring in here. Number one, I'm not a lawyer, even if I did have to dissect music industry contracts when I was teaching further education about 10 years ago, and that stuff was an absolute minefield. How you can practically be owned by the record labels, exclusivity deals for 10 years, meaning you can't release material even if the label drops you. Proper airtight stuff that makes this sort of thing look like a verbal handshake agreement. Number two, these contracts aren't available for Joe Public like us to look at. Although it would be cool if one day a driver does release a contract for us to read through as a PDF, or if anyone from one of the teams is watching, they could draw up a dummy contract, or at least send me one with a couple of NDAs to sign. I'd genuinely like to have a look. I'd imagine they're not a couple of pages long, and I bet they're written in full legalese. The stuff that you'd have to pay the most high price of high-priced lawyers to look through. The sort of guys that could get Stephen Hawking a driving licence. Then there's Safnauer's mentions of loyalty to the F1 media, which I don't know what to think. Is he accusing Piastri of being unloyal to Alpine? That Piastri is only allowed to be driving in blue? Maybe Piastri is sick of being messed around by Alpine and knows he's been given the runaround behind the scenes. And at the minute, it looks like he saw them not renewing his contract and then started talking to McLaren to be safe in terms of getting a seat. This is starting to sound like one of those Tucker Carlson bits, isn't it? Are liberals really trying to ban oxygen? I can't do that same gormless face that he does, though. The whole thing is starting to play out like that scene from EastEnders between Kat and Zoe Slater, basically saying, you're not going to McLaren and that's the end of it. Why? Because you said so. You can't tell me what to do, you're not my mother. Yes, I am. There does seem to be an aura of, we made you what you are, you owe us from Alpine right here, but it will be interesting to see how all of this plays out. I don't actually think Alpine has a leg to stand on, but I don't think this will be the owned by Piastri that some people seem to think it will be. He still needs to get through the door at McLaren, and with Ricciardo going to need millions to get out of his contract, will it be a financial hit McLaren will want to take? $21 million or something like that? I don't know. But again, these contracts are complex and opaque, and the only way we will know what happens is when the courts make their decisions. So in this instance, only time and money will tell. So then, some opinions on the latest episode of Silly Season 2022. If this has given you food for thought or you've learned something here today, do give the video a like so the YouTube elves can do their thing. If you do want to see more from this channel, subscribe, get the bell on, do whatever you kids do, so you never miss out on anything I do around here. Massive thanks to the good folk of Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help contribute to the image buying fund, you can help out through the link in the description, or you can do a one-off super thanks if that's more your thing. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind. Have a cracking day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.